We are rocking and rolling and recording. Hello, everybody. I'm Vin Ebenau from the Townsquare Media Jersey Shore newsroom for 92.7 WOBM, 94.3 The Point, 105.7 The Hawk, and Beach Radio 104.1 FM. Here with a couple Ocean County Central Regional Alumni, Charley and Vlas Parlapanides, who are writers and producers in Hollywood who have gone from the sunshine of the Jersey Shore to the bright lights of Hollywood, and have a new upcoming series coming up in a couple weeks called The Blood of Zeus, and we'll detail that in a couple minutes. But guys, thanks for taking out some time to talk about your journeys to Hollywood to this point and your upcoming series. So
thank you for having us on, Vin. We really appreciate it, and it's great to be on WOBM. It just reminds us growing up in Seaside Park, to be honest, like even just thinking about doing this call, I can picture our father, in our house in O Street, in Seaside, whenever it would snow, just like coming out into the living room, and he had this little radio, and we'd be listening to hear if Central was, closed. And it's just so nostalgic and so great. So it's just great to join you. Thank you for having us on. We're very proud, having grown up in Seaside Park and being from Ocean County. So it's great to be with you today.
Thank you.
That's one of the points I brought up at the station when we were reflecting on our 50th year a couple years back. Is like, I remember growing up, to your point, Charlie, listening to the 92.7 every morning, hoping in the winter that when it was snowing, like, please say Tom's River Regional schools are closed today.
Does that even still happen? Do you guys even still do that? Is that?
We do it online, a little bit on the air as well, just kind of letting people know what's on a delay, what's closed for the day and everything, and giving kids hope, and disappointing some, I guess, saying you got to go to school.
It's so funny, and I totally agree with Charlie, and thank you again for having us. And whenever we have an excuse to think about New Jersey, to think about our hometown, it's always something that's very welcoming, because we loved where we grew up. We feel that we were very blessed and very fortunate to have been raised in Seaside Park, to have been raised in a working class family. There's so many values that were instilled in us, and values that we still hold dear to this day. And it's just, we love reminiscing. We love thinking of the Jersey Shore, and our time at Central. And there were definitely influences in high school that we can definitely talk about. So thank you. This is more of a pleasure for us than it is, we just really love our hometown and love talking about it.
And we would be doing this anyway. Normally we have an office, but we've been working from home since the shelter at home order here in California. But like, there's not a day goes by where there's not some story from growing up or back home or from Central. We just, again, as Les said, we feel very blessed to have grown up in Ocean County. It's an amazing place to raise a family. Now that we're fathers, we really kind of appreciate how lucky we were, because what was great is that it was still, you had this small town, blue collar feel, but New York was an hour and a half away, Philly was an hour and a half away, and the summers at the shore, they were just great. They were magical, magical times, and we wouldn't be where we're at now without the people that we got to know and meet growing up, because they instilled the work ethic that we feel has helped us succeed in this business. And it was just great. It was just great. And you mentioned, like people that had an influence. I'll never forget, Mr. Clemente, Mike Clemente at Central Regional. He was my history teacher. He was also our basketball coach. But one of the things I always tell people, they ask about, and football, they ask like, well, what does it take to be a writer? And I always tell them, if you want to write, you have to love to read. It's like saying like, I want to play basketball without practicing dribbling. Like, you just can't do the one without the other. And I remember, Mr. Clemente was a great history teacher. And I remember reading, the Guns of August in his class. And I always loved, world history and World War I. And then we read American Caesar. And I know, he was one that really encouraged us to read. And I've always loved history, and that just really made an indelible mark on me. And it's something I definitely carried, into college. But he was someone that really stressed that, and he was a great teacher. And I'm always thankful for that experience. And, as I'm sure Vlas will echo, the biggest thing that we took from growing up there in New Jersey is just being tough and not taking no for an answer, and believing in yourself. And, there's a lot of people in the business, from New Jersey. I think a disproportionate number, because I do think that blue collar, tough New Jersey mentality, it just helps you survive in this business, because it's such a roller coaster. So I don't.
And Mr. Clemente was great. It's great. I think, no matter what advice you're given, it's what you see that really resonates. And what we saw, and even Mr. Clemente, he loved what he was doing. And that was always a goal from very on. When you see someone genuinely love, he loved to coach and to see, and then to ask yourself, because those are formative years, that was something that was important, to stay true to ourselves, to find what we truly love and then to pursue it. And when you see it in a coach, that resonates. And I would say for me, there are two, I think, teachers that influenced me. I'd say the first would be Miss Cafora. She was my Spanish teacher. She was great. Again, another person who was passionate about what she did. She loved what she did. She was so good at what she ddid. And she wrote me a letter of recommendation, and it helped me get into Villanova. And I remember when I had read it, I was a little taken aback. I said, I almost felt like it wasn't merited. And she, I feel, was someone who saw something in myself that I hadn't seen up until that point. And we were blessed to have parents that believe in us. And part of being successful is having someone believe in you. And we had those parents, but getting that affirmation from Miss Kaffour, for me, was very helpful, and it had a big impact. And going back to Mr. Clemente, what I learned playing football was the first time where I knew if I could set a goal for myself, I could work hard. I was benched my freshman year. I didn't play as a freshman. Charlie was much better at football than I was, by the way.
Our other brother, Dr. P, he's the best football player in the bunch, because he played like a wild dog, like a rabid animal. He just.
Dr. P is like a pit bull, man. He just kept going. And it's funny because we talked to Keith Elias a little while back, and I said, Keith, do you remember this hit that Dr. P, he had hit you behind the line of scrimmage, and everyone in the audience went like, oh. But then Keith rolled, or Dr. P didn't
spun out of it.
He spun out of it, and he ran 30 yards down the field. And Keith's like, I remember that play. But
Keith was a big dude back in the day too.
Yeah, he was, he's a great guy. His brother's a great guy. And we really enjoyed the conversation we had with them. They're also screenwriters. Or they love to write screenplays and write in general. But it went, again, just to get back to the story. So from freshman year, I said, you know what, I want to be a starter. And I just worked really hard. I lifted, I did whatever I could. And then by my senior year, I did very well. So that can be applied to any profession. It's like, okay, what is your goal? You work hard, you make sacrifices, and you don't let anyone sway you from pursuing what you really want to achieve. And that was learned at Central Regional.
Were you guys in any clubs or organizations outside of sports in high school or even college that kind of nurtured your path into writing and producing and making it big?
I would say like peer leaders. We were peer leaders, and it really helped to mentor someone that was younger, to get a perspective that was different from ours, to lend them an ear, to try to give them some positive advice. And I think it was helpful for the person that we were mentoring, but it was also helpful for us because it gave us another perspective on things, and it helped us, or helped me, I would say, appreciate what we have. I think that was a very helpful thing in high school.
I know peer mediation was a program I was involved with at Central, and that was a great program because basically it was meant where students could intervene and help resolve a dispute between two students. And I know just from a storytelling point of view, I was always fascinated how two people could experience the same situation and have such a different point of view. So I loved that. Peer mediation, and then legal evils, that was all, again, we were very lucky, like between Mr. Selby, who was an amazing history teacher, Mr. Clemente, Mr. Winklereed, they were all involved in those programs. Me, I was never a math and science guy. I was always, in English, we had great English teachers, Mrs. Palmer, Mrs. Mueller, the creative writing teacher. I remember writing short stories in that class, and her encouraging me. I think that helped. I will say one of the biggest things that helped, I think, us do what we do now is that I worked on the boardwalk in Seaside at one of those wheels. And it was, and just, I was like 13. I was getting paid under the table. But what was great is that you just learned how to engage people and how to talk to them. And a lot of what we do is there's a certain degree of salesmanship. You have to go in, you have to pitch ideas, you have to pitch executives and producers. And I'm telling you, I learned all of that at 13 years old on the boardwalk, trying to get people to play, the concession I was working. That I think is one of the most invaluable lessons. It's outside the scope of school. But that was great. And again, it was just like Vlas said, we had great teachers. We were very lucky. We had great coaches. I give all the credit in the world to Coach Dan Duddy, who was my football coach. Learned so much from him, just how to be a man and how to be a good person and how to be responsible and accountable and how to push yourself. So between having great teachers and great coaches and an amazing family, and then also just growing up in New Jersey. What's great about New Jersey, and it's why it's always nice to come home, is that New Jersey, whether you like it or not, people will tell you what they honestly feel and think. You don't get that out here. Everyone out here, they pour a little sugar on it, and in New Jersey they'll tell you. And to be honest, I prefer that. I prefer to know where you stand. Then we can be honest. We can have an understanding instead of kind of the superficialness of the West Coast sometimes. So all of that stuff, it gets imbued in you.
I agree too with working on the boardwalk, because what that also helps doing, you deal with rejection, because you've seen those people like, no, I'm sorry, rejection.
Yeah.
And guess what? Rejection's a big part of this business. So it's good to get that at a young age. And as I'm sure you've experienced it too, it's just part of the job, and you have to kind of not let it in any way diminish your enthusiasm. That's something that you learn. And the sooner you learn that in life, I think the better off you are. When we first moved out here, I told Charlie, it feels like we're failing 99% of the time. And then I read something that Arthur Miller had said, and Arthur Miller had said, someone asked him, he said, how were you able to write Death of a Salesman? And Arthur Miller said, well, that was easy, because by the time I wrote that, 98% of what I experienced was failure. So when I had to write about failure, it was easy. So I told Charlie, hey, we're at 99, he's at 98. We're only 1% than the great Arthur Miller, so we shouldn't feel bad. But speaking of teachers, Mr. Holleran was another teacher that I loved. He was such a great teacher.
He's a good man.
And he was such a great coach. He was another guy, for whatever reason, just believed in me. And I remember he was the JV basketball coach. And they don't get classier than Mr. Holleran, just a really bright guy, a man that was very good as a teacher and as a coach. And he was someone that had an influence. And Mr. Selby too, Charlie had mentioned him, man, what a great teacher. I loved going to his class. He was so good. And he was a great coach too. And I think also one thing I would add, I think people take pride in what they do in our hometown, and I'm not saying that they don't take pride in it out here. Mm-hmm. But it was something that, again, no matter what people say, it's what they do. When you saw it day in and day out, from Mr. Selby to Mr. Holleran to Mrs. Kafora, it makes an impression. Mr. Schultz was another very positive role model, and it helped shape who we are. And we're proud of that.
So since you guys have made a big put out multiple productions and shows over the years, how has that all come together, including your latest work, which we're going to discuss a little bit more here, The Blood of Zeus. How did that all come together, and what is the storyline about? Now, I checked out the trailer certainly before coming on today. When I heard Blood of Zeus, my mind automatically went to the animation, where Hercules is the hero figure in the cartoon movie and everything. I imagine you don't have Michael Bolton singing songs in the upcoming show, but tell me about Heron and Zeus and what this show is all about.
It was Charlie's idea, so maybe you can kind of lead into it, bro.
Well, Vin, with what we do, when you're a writer, you're a freelancer. It's you go gig by gig. Okay. There's no paycheck every 2 weeks. And so we're constantly, we've been in the Writers Guild. We sold our first script now 14 years ago. And so we're always trying to generate ideas and pitch ideas. And we've always believed that Greek mythology. You could do kind of like a Marvel MCU type universe and just tell some of the stories from Greek mythology. But whenever you pitch that to executives, even though they may like Greek mythology and have an affinity for it, they always kind of feel like, well, been there, done that. There's been 6 Hercules movies now, and there's been, we've seen Jason and the Argonauts, and their eyes kind of glaze over. And so now I don't agree with that. I do think you could make those stories with modern technology, with a modern slant, and they would be great. But as our job as writers is to get the executives to say yes, to buy it and to pay us to write it. And so with Blood of Zeus, what we did was we said, well, listen, part of it is Greek mythology is not like the Bible. They didn't have an ecumenical council where they all sat down and said, this is the one definitive version, and this is going to be chapter and verse, and this is the definitive version of these stories. With Greek mythology, because it was an oral tradition, there's lots of different versions of these stories. And sometimes you read one adaptation, or you read an adaptation from the North, or you read an adaptation from Crete, and the stories differ. So what we pitched was, we said, listen, this was an oral tradition. And because it was an oral tradition, some of these stories were never transcribed. And in fact, some of them were lost. And actually, this is one of these lost stories. And because we're coming at it now as, oh, this is a new story, but it's in the world of Greek mythology, and we get to play in that sandbox, then all of a sudden, they're open to hearing these stories of Greek mythology. And so what we did was we just created, and we used certain archetypes that were true in the world. So like, in Greek mythology, half the characters are illegitimate sons of Zeus. Our main character, Heron, as you can tell from the trailer, is one of these. But Heron literally just means hero in Greek. So we created an original story where this person who's been told he's a bastard his whole life, he's told he's worthless, that he's no good, he finds out he's the son of Zeus, wants nothing to do with Zeus because he feels like his mother and he have suffered, they've lived as, basically as helots, which is like the lowest class in the Greek world. But Zeus needs him to help him undo some of his sins, some of the wrongdoings he's done, and Heron wants nothing to do with it. And as what happens in every Greek mythology story, Hera, who was always very she was viewed as one of the more serene and level-headed gods until she found out Zeus was cheating on her, and then she would always try and kill the illegitimate son. She tried to kill Hercules, she tried to kill Apollo, she would always do that. And so this really cool story unfolds where we use all of these elements of Greek mythology, but because we're not saying this is Perseus or Hercules, they were open to it. And we feel very blessed to have told the story we got to tell, because we're super proud of the show and we think it's great and people seem to like it, and we just hope that people will tune in.
And to be clear too, we have the beloved characters that are so popular. We have Zeus, we have Poseidon, we have Hera, we have
Hermes and Apollo and Ares, and we do things in parts of Greek mythology that we feel even haven't gotten the love that they deserve. The Oneri, which were the dream gods. We have the Fates. We get to see, we have chimeras, we have griffins, so you get to get all of that magic. But what we've always said and pitched, especially to the executives at Netflix, is that before the X-Men, before Marvel, there were the Olympians. They were the first superheroes. They were the archetype for all of that. And so what's great is that we have a really cool story unfolding on a mortal level and on the immortal level with the gods, and it's just come together in a really cool way. And
we love fantasy, and we just still hark back to the experience we had when we saw Lord of the Rings, when we saw Star Wars, and we want to imbue that in the show. And thank God it's in the show, because our director, Sean Negogoshian, did a great job. He did a great job. It's a series, but he directed it like a feature. And so it's big, it's epic. If you love those movies.
Cinematic too.
Cinematic, it's a great word for it to describe it. If you love those movies, you're gonna love the show. It has that, where you can escape. And you can also, I think it's really good at evoking emotions. It's gonna pull at the emotional strings, but it's also gonna make you feel good. And I think that's, the movies that we've loved are movies that are these big worlds that have these personal stories baked in them. And those are the ones that get us excited. And those are the ones that we're passionate about. And that's why we're passionate about this show. And the other beautiful thing, having worked on some other projects in the past, this is the one that we were involved creatively the whole way through. We didn't have that. We weren't afforded that opportunity with some of our other projects. You know, especially with features, you get rewritten, we were rewritten, and we just weren't involved creatively the whole way through, but we were, because this is television, and we were able to be part of that process, you know, there along with Sean, collaborating with him together, you know, until the very end.
To what Vlas is referring to, and I sometimes tell this to people, if you don't like a movie, blame the director, and if you don't like a TV show, blame the writer, because in features, the features is a completely director-driven business. And if you don't do what the director asks, if you don't make the changes that they ask, they fire you and they hire someone else. And in TV, the director is secondary, usually. In animation, this was a little bit different. We had a great collaboration with Sean. But in TV, it's the writers that control the process, and the directors are brought in more as, you know, guns for hire per episode. So that's an oversimplification of that, but that's what was really rewarding for Vlas and I, is that what we wrote is what ending up on screen. And so that was just really great. And it was just great also to collaborate with Shanto, because he had ideas that just, you know, kept making the show better and better and better. He did an amazing job.
He did a brilliant job. He's a very talented director. We feel blessed. It's one of our prayers answered. Our mom prays for us all the time. And the fact that we are now working in animation, which is, you know, I would say COVID proof, is a prayer answered. This entire project is a prayer answered. Working with someone as talented as Sean, who was able to bring those scenes to life. Because if you really think about it, he's working in a void. You know, a live feature director is working with actors so they can kind of look at a scene and the actors can kind of, you know, move around, and you're not afforded that in animation. He has to think of, like, the actor would be looking this way or doing this, that, the other thing. He has to act out all the parts.
There's no location. It's not like you show up on location or you work with a, you know, production designer to build a set. You know, literally we sat down at the Powerhouse offices and we went through each script page by page, and it's like, all right, will you describe this as a temple? What does the temple look like? Are there statues? You know, is it, you know, and you have to go through everything. And that was just a really informative process. And then Sean just, you know, he just spun gold. He just did great. He did an amazing job.
And we love working with Netflix. You know, we love working with John Dodarian, with Dylan Thomas, an executive that was there, Brandon Mattingly was great. They were just great collaborators. You know, it was a very rewarding project professionally and creatively. They let us do our thing. They believed in this idea. And it's not, you know, normally when an executive looks at a project, they always feel a little bit better about taking on a project that has big IP. Now, Greek mythology definitely has an awareness, and it's kind of its own IP a little bit, but it was a big risk for John to take this. So we just want the show to do well, obviously because we want a season 2, obviously because we want to keep telling the story and we love doing it, but also too, hey, that guy stuck his neck out for us and he had the vision to believe in this, and we're very grateful for him doing that. And, you know, we're over a million, what, bro, 1,200,000?
1.2 million views on YouTube for the trailer,
wow,
which is great for an anime show in a week, within 1 week.
1 week. So I feel that, you know, the other thing, if you love Castlevania and you love Greek mythology, you're going to love this show.
that's a great tease right there. So Blood of Zeus out on Netflix October 27th. Okay,
Worldwide.
So worldwide, and make sure, if you don't have a Netflix account, make a Netflix account at the very least to check out Blood of Zeus. And out October 27th, check out all the episodes. And Charley, Vlas, thanks for taking out some time today to discuss your Ocean County Central Regional roots and how you've made it out to Hollywood and put together a great success in your career so far, and certainly with Blood of Zeus. Wishing you guys all the best in season 1 and for as many seasons as you have in mind.
Hey, we'll take as many as we can. And by the way, a little known fact, but Zeus was actually born in the Jersey Shore, and he loves to fist pump. So.
Hey, that's another reason to love the Jersey Shore, where Zeus came from.
That's right. I mean, everyone.
Guys, thanks again for taking out.
Thanks for having us.
And the best of luck to you both.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Take care.